Imagine this. During a festival that's all about good conquering evil, the hero's effigy gets burned instead of the villain's. Yeah, it's a pretty shocking reversal of tradition, right? But the story behind why it happened is, believe it or not, even more surprising. Let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, let's break down the event itself. It all starts with a really shocking act that took place during one of India's biggest festivals. So here's the absolute core of it. During Dussehra, a festival that celebrates the victory of good over evil, an effigy of Lord Ram was burned. Now, for anyone who knows the tradition, it's always the demon king Ravana who gets burned to symbolize getting rid of evil. So to see the hero get treated like the villain, it's jarring, to say the least. And it raises one huge question. Why on earth would someone do that? This whole thing went down in Tiruchirappalli, which is in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. And you know what? The location is actually a really key piece of the puzzle for understanding the story that quickly started to form around this incident. So what happened next? Well, the aftermath was pretty swift. The authorities didn't just let it slide. The people who did this were arrested. And that immediately tells you something important. This act was seen as a public offense, not some kind of protected cultural expression. Now, an event like this, it rarely ever stays just a local news story. Instead, it fed right into a much bigger and, let's be honest, often oversimplified idea about South India as a whole. When people hear about this, you can almost see the gears turning. It can seem to confirm a stereotype that's been around for a while, that in South India, Ravana is actually a more revered figure than Ram. On the surface, this incident looks like the perfect piece of evidence for that idea, doesn't it? But hold on, is that stereotype really accurate? The source material we're digging into here really challenges us to look past that easy explanation. And right here, we see the central conflict laid out. On one side, you have the perception that this one single event speaks for all of South India. But on the other side, you have the reality. Countless people in the South are devout followers of Lord Ram. The big takeaway here is that the actions of just a few people absolutely do not define an entire, incredibly diverse region. So, if this wasn't some broad cultural statement, then what was it? Well, the source we're looking at proposes a totally different and frankly much more cynical motive. The analysis in our source suggests the motive wasn't about genuine religious or cultural belief at all. No, instead, it was a calculated stunt to get publicity and, even more dangerously, to spread hatred and division. It seems like it was designed from the very beginning to be provocative and to grab those headlines. And this brings us to a really crucial distinction. Look, choosing not to believe in or revere a particular deity, that's a personal choice. That's one thing. But actively using that stance to spread hatred and provoke other people, well, that crosses a line, doesn't it? It turns a personal choice into a public act of aggression. To really put all of this into perspective, the source gives us one final, fascinating point of comparison. And this one comes from outside of India. For a real-world example of what actual reverence for Ravana looks like, the source points us to Sri Lanka, where he is a very significant cultural figure. This creates such a stark contrast, right? It just highlights the massive difference between genuine cultural respect and simply using a name to stir up conflict just to get some attention. So ultimately, this whole incident leaves us with a pretty fundamental question. Where do we draw the line between a personal belief and public incitement? It's a question that stays with you long after the embers of any effigy have gone out. Something to think about.